What if failure was not even an option, not a possibility, not a backup plan, not something you prepare for, but something you eliminate from your thinking? Most people live with two plans. Plan A, I hope it works. Plan B, if it doesn't I'll settle. But the great ones, they burn the boats, they remove the exit door, they act as if success is the only road left to walk. Because here's the truth, when you leave space for failure you will use it, but when you close the door, when you commit, when you decide I will make it happen or I will die trying, life starts responding differently. Your mind changes, your effort changes, your energy changes, your destiny changes. So the question is not can you succeed, the real question is have you removed failure from your belief system, or are you still giving it room to breathe? Let me begin with a simple idea. Most people fail not because they don't have the talent, but because they always leave themselves a way out. They say, if it doesn't work, I'll try something else. If it gets hard, I'll stop. If I fail, at least I tried. But here's the truth, the moment you give yourself an exit, your mind will use it. You see, the human mind is clever. If it knows there's a backup plan, it won't give 100%, it will slow down, it will negotiate, it will settle. That's why some people stay average, not because they're not capable, but because they never fully decide. There is a mental switch, a psychological shift that separates the achievers from the dreamers, and it sounds like this: failure is not an option. I'm going to make this work no matter what. Not I'll try, not I'll give it a shot, but this must work. There is no alternative. That decision does something extraordinary to the mind. It forces creativity, it ignites discipline, it creates new levels of energy, because when your brain knows there is no escape, it stops looking for comfort and starts looking for solutions. When you leave doors open, you weaken your commitment. When you close the doors, you strengthen your focus. Let me put it this way, a man who says, if this doesn't work, I'll go back, will never go forward with full power. But the one who says there is no going back has already won half the battle, because now the question is not can I do it, the question becomes how do I make it happen. That's a different level of thinking. That's the level where success lives. Some people say, well, Jim, I'm trying. Let me tell you, trying is not doing. Trying is a polite way of saying I don't want to fully commit. When someone says I'll try, they are already preparing to quit, just waiting for the first excuse. But when someone says I will, the mind goes to work differently. One word changes everything. Try is weak, will is powerful. A young man once asked a wise teacher, sir, what's the secret to success? The teacher led him to a river, pushed his head underwater, and held it there. The young man struggled, fought, and finally was let go, gasping for air. He asked what was that, for the teacher said, when you want success as badly as you wanted air a moment ago, then you'll have it. That's no option thinking. That's the mindset of someone who refuses to drown in excuses. Most people want success, but they also want comfort. They want growth, but they also want safety. But success has rules, and one of the greatest is this: you cannot hold on to your excuses and hold on to success at the same time. One must go, either the plan or the excuse, either the goal or the comfort. So here's the question: do you want success, or are you committed to success? Wanting is emotional, commitment is intentional. Wanting says I hope I get there, commitment says I'll get there or I'll die trying. That is the psychology of no retreat, no surrender, the kind of mindset that made the impossible possible, the kind of mindset that built empires, companies, legends, and leaders. Not talent, not luck, not magic, a simple decision: I'm not giving myself another option. When failure is not an option, your mind finds a way. When quitting is not a possibility, discipline becomes automatic. When excuses are not welcome, success becomes inevitable, because life does not reward the person who tries, life rewards the one who decides. There's an ancient story: a leader took his army across the sea to face a powerful enemy. When they arrived on the shore, the soldiers turned and saw something shocking: their boats were on fire. The leader said, we will not leave this land unless we win. If we're going home, we're going home. In their ships, no escape, no retreat, only one direction forward. And history says they won, not because they were stronger, not because they were smarter, but because they had no way back. That is the power of burning the boats. What are boats? They are your excuses, your backup plans, your if it doesn't work, I'll just, your comfort zone disguised as logic. A man says, if this business doesn't work, I'll try another one. If this dream doesn't happen, I'll settle for something else. If life gets hard, I'll go back to what's familiar. And guess what? He always ends up going back, not because he's weak, but because he never shut the door behind him. At some point in your journey, you must say, this is it, I'm all in, no more testing the water, I'm diving in or drowning trying. Because here's the lesson: weak commitment leads to weak results, strong commitment leads to unstoppable progress. When you burn the boats, you stop negotiating with your fears, you stop entertaining your doubts, you stop asking what if it doesn't work, and instead ask how do I make it work. Same life, same challenge, different mindset. Someone who is interested will do what's convenient. Someone who is committed will do whatever it takes. Interested says, I'll do it when I feel like it. Committed says, I'll do it even when I don't feel like it. Interested looks for motivation. Committed builds discipline. Interested hopes for the best. Committed prepares for the worst and still moves forward. That's what burning the boats does. It eliminates the option of Being half present because it's scary. It means accepting full responsibility, no excuses, no safety net, no one else to blame. It means you can't hide anymore. You can't say, well, I didn't try my best, so that's why. No, when you're all in, it's either win or learn. That kind of ownership scares the average person, but the uncommon person, the leader, the champion, they demand it, because they know comfort protects you from pain, but it also protects you from growth. A young man told his mentor, I want to succeed, but I'm afraid to give everything. What if I fail? The mentor said, what if you don't? What if the only thing standing between where you are and where you want to be is the fact that you left yourself an exit? Then he said something unforgettable. Success is not for the person who wants it, it's for the person who has decided they cannot live without it. That's what burning the boats is, a decision to never live a life of what if. Life begins to open doors for the committed. Why? Because commitment is rare. Most people quit, most people hesitate, most people stay in the middle, but when life sees someone fully invested, someone who removes the escape door, it smiles and whispers, finally someone serious. Then the teachers appear, the resources show up, the energy rises, doors open that stay closed for the half-interested, because life does not reward effort, it rewards full surrender to the mission. When you leave a backup plan, your mind will use it. When you burn the boats, your only option is victory. When you stop thinking, what if I fail, and start thinking, how will I win, you grow. When you remove plan B, plan A becomes non-negotiable. And remember this, if you give yourself the chance to quit, you will so close the exits, delete the excuses, commit not until it's convenient, but until it's done, because once you burn the boats, your only way out is forward. Let me tell you something that may surprise you. People who win don't win because failure is impossible. They win because in their mind failure is irrelevant. They don't deny it, they don't pretend it doesn't exist, they just don't give it authority. They act as if success is the only acceptable ending, not one of many outcomes, the only one. You and I both know failure can happen. Plans fall apart, people let you down, money runs out, life hits you in the mouth. But here's the difference, average people plan for failure, winners prepare to overcome it. They don't say, what if I fail? They say, what will I do after I fall so I can still win? That's the mindset, not the mindset of fantasy, the mindset of certainty. Some say, but Jim, isn't it foolish to believe failure doesn't exist? No, what's foolish is giving failure power before it even happens. Great people don't ignore reality. They bend it. They say, I will act like failure is not the end. I will act like setback is part of the strategy. One will act like I am already the person who wins in the end. That mindset changes everything, because when you act like failure doesn't own you, you stop hesitating, and hesitation is the first step toward losing. A young athlete said to his coach, what if I don't make it? The coach said, don't talk like that. You don't train to try, you train to arrive. You train as if losing is not your story. The coach didn't mean losing was impossible. He meant the athlete should not spend his energy building mental room for defeat, because when the mind expects alternatives, the heart weakens its commitment. Here's something most people miss. Successful people don't avoid failure, they outgrow it. They fail, yes, but they don't turn that failure into identity. They don't say, I failed, so I must not be good enough. They say, I failed, so now I have data, and data makes me dangerous. Most people stop, winners adjust. Most people take failure personally, winners take it strategically. They don't wait to feel confident, they behave confidently. They don't wait to know everything, they move with what they know. They don't wait to erase fear, they move even with fear present, and slowly fear loses its voice, because life responds not to the timid mind, but to the one who acts as if victory is already in motion, because your brain follows your posture, your habits follow your belief, your results follow your standards. If you act like failure is an option, your effort will reflect that. But if you act like quitting is not allowed, you begin to operate at a level most people never reach. That's why winners have a different glow, a different pace, a different tone in their voice. They aren't wondering, will I win? They're planning how I will handle winning. Failure is real, but it is not your master unless you bow to it. Fear shows up, but it loses power when you stop giving it a chair at your table. Doubt whispers, but it cannot control a mind that is already decided. Acting confident is not pretending, it is training your future self. You do not escape failure by avoiding it, you escape failure by walking through it stronger each time. Every person who ever became someone great learned to live by this rule: I may fall, but I will not fail, because failure is not an ending, only a step. That is how you act like failure doesn't exist, not by denying it, but by refusing to let it write the final chapter. When you stop seeing failure as a wall and start seeing it as a doorway, you don't just change your results, you change who you are. You see, there's a certain mindset that separates the average from the extraordinary. It's not talent, it's not IQ, it's not luck, it's commitment, a total unshakable no turning back decision that says, I will win because I have no other choice. That's the mindset of champions, because the truth is, people who win big in life don't give themselves a plan B. They don't leave a door open to escape. They don't Say if this doesn't work I'll try something else. They say this will work because it must work, and that changes everything. No backup plan equals full power activated. When there's a backup plan the mind relaxes. It says if this gets too hard I can always quit, and the moment quitting becomes an option discipline dies, focus weakens, effort decreases, and destiny is lost. But when you remove the exit door, when there's no way out but forward, you unlock levels of power you didn't even know you had. Most people never discover the second layer of strength inside them because they stop at the first sign of discomfort. Champions don't stop. Champions push until they break through. Why? Because they have to. There's a difference between trying and deciding. Trying says, I'll do it as long as it's easy. Deciding says, I'll do it until it's done. Trying is emotional. Deciding is final. You don't need motivation when you've already decided. You don't need someone to push you. Your decision pushes you. When you live with no backup plan, you stop negotiating with yourself. The question is no longer can I do it? The question becomes how do I make it happen? That's how champions think. Life respects firmness. The universe bends for the committed. Opportunities open for the person who refuses to turn around. You've seen it. Someone less talented, less educated, less smart, but they win. Why? Because they decided not to quit. No matter what, champions are not fearless. They just don't allow fear to become a decision. They feel fear, they feel doubt, they feel pressure, but there's no exit door, so they keep going, and because they keep going they win. If you have a backup plan you'll use it. If you have a safety net you'll fall on it. If you have another option you'll take it. When life gets tough, that's why most people never reach greatness. They always leave themselves a way out. Comfort kills hunger. Comfort kills dreams. Comfort is where potential goes to sleep. Champions live where it's uncomfortable because they know comfort creates ordinary. Pressure creates greatness. Let me give you a simple formula. No escape plus full commitment plus relentless effort equals inevitable success. When failure is not an option, success eventually becomes the only outcome. Not today, not tomorrow, maybe not for years, but it becomes inevitable because when you never stop you cannot lose. Your life changes the day you say this is it. The turning point in every champion story is the same moment, the moment they said this is the only path. I'm not turning back. From that moment on everything aligned. Their energy, their behavior, their focus, their habits, decisions became easier. Discipline became natural. Fear became useless because the question was no longer can I. The only question was how do I get it done. The truth is most people could succeed, they just don't stay in the fight long enough. They don't lose to failure, they lose to fatigue, they lose to doubt, they lose to lack of commitment. The champion doesn't quit in the middle. He doesn't slow down when it gets heavy. He doesn't look for the exit. He says if I fall I rise, if I fail I try again, if it breaks I rebuild, but I do not quit. That's the difference. You must become someone new to live with no backup plan. Not the old you who hesitates, not the old you who needs permission, not the old you who waits for motivation. The new you says I don't hope, I decide, I don't try, I commit, I don't wish, I work. That's the identity of a champion. Not someone who wants success, but someone who refuses to live without it. You don't need more time, you don't need more luck, you don't need more motivation. You need a decision so strong it burns every bridge behind you, because once there's nowhere else to go, forward becomes the only direction, and that is how champions are made. If this is the mindset you're ready to live with, then welcome to the 1%. The world is waiting for the version of you who never turns back. Act as if failure is not an option, and watch how life rearranges itself around your decision. Imagine for a moment you wake up tomorrow morning, the sun rises, the world keeps turning, and you make a choice. The same choice champions make every single day. No exit, no backup, no option, but forward. This is the philosophy of the truly successful. Not a passing motivation, not a momentary fire, a lifetime commitment. Living with no option is simple to describe, hard to implement. It's easy to say I'll act as if failure isn't real, but to live it every day, to wake up each morning and face challenges with absolute commitment, that requires a mindset shift. It's about turning decisions into non-negotiables, turning actions into rituals, turning your life into a path that bends only towards success. You start to notice something incredible. The world begins to respond differently. Opportunities appear, doors open that were invisible before. People respect your drive, not your words, but your unshakable stance. The daily test, each day life tests you, tests your patience, tests your discipline, tests your commitment. Some mornings your body says rest, your mind says not today, your emotions beg for comfort. The old you might listen, the new you, the version living with no option, pushes forward anyway, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when failure seems possible. I once met a man in business, ordinary in every way, not the richest, not the smartest, not the most connected, but he made a promise to himself: I will not quit, not for anything, not for anyone. I will see this through. He burned every backup plan. He ignored the whispers of doubt. He worked when everyone else slept. He learned when others played. He persisted when the world would have given up. 10 years later he wasn't just successful, he was unstoppable because he lived with no option. Why most people never live this way? Because most people give themselves an escape hatch, a backup plan, a soft landing, and every escape hatch is a seed of failure. Every soft landing is a way to stop before the goal. The truth is, if you want to reach heights few ever do, you must be willing to remove all safety nets. The philosophy is simple: when you remove every escape, you force yourself to grow. When failure is no longer a choice, effort becomes unstoppable. When compromise is impossible, success becomes inevitable. It's not magic, it's not luck, it's choice, decision, total commitment. How to live it every day. 1. Decide now, not tomorrow, not next week. Decide that quitting is not an option. 2. Burn your boats. Remove excuses, remove easy outs, remove the backup plans that slow you down. 3. Act with certainty. Move forward even when you don't feel ready. 4. Learn. Adjust, persist. Failure is just data. Adjust, but never turn back. 5. Measure against your standards, not against others. Your standard is your commitment. When you combine these steps, you don't just work towards success, you become the person who embodies it. Life rewards the committed, not the interested. Comfort is the enemy of greatness. Failure is not a wall, it's a stepping stone. Decisions that eliminate escape routes create unstoppable momentum. Champions aren't born, they live with no option. What happens if you live the rest of your life with this philosophy? You stop negotiating with fear, you stop giving power to doubt, you stop leaving your dreams at the mercy of mood or circumstance. You create a life where action is automatic and giving up is impossible, because when you live as if failure isn't an option, every obstacle becomes a lesson, every setback becomes a setup, every day becomes progress. This isn't about luck, it isn't about chance, it isn't about being the smartest, strongest, or most talented. It's about a decision. Decide that quitting is impossible. Decide that you will act with full commitment. Decide that no matter what happens you will move forward, and then watch your life change, because when there's no option but forward, forward is all you can be. Live with no option, commit fully, and the world will bend toward your decision.